Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released. Show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. Well, it is almost April, and you can feel spring coming. We've had cold, rainy weather here in Jersey recently, but you know what they say about spring showers. I definitely want to get into gardening and planting this year, so that is a goal of mine. I want to grow peppers, hot peppers, and other vegetables. That's what I plan on doing. I've made it a goal to spend more time outside these last few years, so camping and going to the beach is paramount on my list coming up. A good book during a camping trip is always a good time. Besides planning for spring, I am still currently reading the Dragon Ball manga. I've gotten to volume 8 now, and the Tournament Under the Heavens, the Budokai Tenkaichi, has just finished, and Goku has started his second quest to collect the Dragon Balls. However, he is impeded by the Red Ribbon Army. The Red Ribbon Army is a solid addition to the series because while offering new and powerful villains again and again, the manga doesn't lose its comically childish charm. Something that you don't see much in Z or GT, but is certainly present in Super. Mercenary Tao makes his debut as well, which is exciting. I don't remember anything about Goku's fight with him specifically, but I'm excited to see how it's handled in the manga's perspective. Goku is also on his way to Korin's Tower, which is one of the most iconic locations in Dragon Ball. It'll be great seeing Korin and Kami and hopefully Yajirobe soon. The manga also has a little Dr. Slump crossover during the fight with General Blue. Dr. Slump is one of Toriyama's earlier mangas, so it's awesome to see characters from that appear in the Dragon Ball world. I would love to get a chance to read that manga at some point. Dragon Ball just has this cartoonish and childish charm to it that you don't see in a lot of media anymore. There's even a rip-off character of Superman that's featured in a few panels, which is really funny. And it just feels like Looney Tunes, just reading the Dragon Ball manga, it just feels like Looney Tunes. Some of the fights are handled very comically, they're not very serious or taking themselves seriously. Even though they're pretty serious topics, they have like these big, strong men beating up 14-year-old boys, and besides some of the other stuff, it's still a pretty childish kind of cartoon, and I like that. It's a very nice manga, so I'm excited to see how it's going to end, how the Dragon Ball manga really ends, because it goes into Z, but there's such a big transition between Ball and Z. Z almost loses all of its charm for a much more serious tone. There's some jokes here and there when the Saiyans arrive and from Frieza, but you almost don't get any of the same kind of level of charm in Z that is prevalent in all of Dragon Ball. So I'm really excited to see what is the big difference between those. And it's just been fun reading through Dragon Ball. Since Toriyama passed, it's kind of just been my kind of way of acknowledging that he's been a big part of my life. I spent so much time watching things of his, and I just want to give that one last go. And hopefully in the future, I can start some of his other content, like the Sandland manga that he has. It is getting a video game adaptation. It had a demo launch or release sometime this month, and I got some time to play with it for a bit. It's pretty cool. It's really cool. It's not like a turn-based RPG or anything, but it's more like an action beat 'em up kind of thing. And you play as this little devil dude, and you have these companions, and you choose what powers they want to do for the fights. You can like summon tanks, and they'll like throw present bombs or whatever on a pretty open desert map, which is cool. There's not much exploration from what I've seen in the demo, so I'm excited to see how that changes in the full game. But it seems like a pretty cool world. It's very endearing. It's pretty charming. The characters talk and have like conversations and talk about what they're doing or what they think about the world at the time, at least in the demo. So that's pretty charming. Um, I just want to play it more. So I might read the manga or watch the anime adaptation that came out way long ago if I don't plan on buying the game because I don't know how much it's going to be. Probably launch price $60-$70. But it's definitely on my list of games to keep an eye out in the future for Sandland. That's definitely going to be on my list. I'm really excited. And, for games, I've been playing Dragon's Dogma 2 after beating the first game. I've been playing that all week, and I'm loving it for what it is. It feels like a watered down Dark Souls, and I don't want it to seem like that makes it like a bad game, but it seems like it takes a lot of same inspiration from the first game, and it doesn't really change that kind of gameplay loop, or it doesn't add any quality of life mechanics or anything like that to the game. It just feels like Dragon's Dogma 1 again in some things. Of course, it's a little more polished. The gameplay is obviously a lot more streamlined and things like that. The combat is definitely more engaging, and it's a little repetitive, but it's simple for the most part. That's not inherently a bad thing. When I say about like a watered down Dark Souls, is that like it tries to make the game feel difficult when it doesn't need to be. And it doesn't hold your hand for a lot of things, like the quests. It doesn't tell you specifically where to go for a lot of the main or even the side quests. So locations are pretty vague, or people who to talk to, or what path you could take for the diverging quest. It's a little unsure for most of it. I've done a lot of Googling for certain quests to see if they've been bugged or if I'm just not at the right time to finish the quest, something like that. And it's a little disheartening to spend time doing that during this game. But the graphics are great. It's a beautiful looking game. The set pieces and the areas are really great to look at because, for the most part, it's like big roads and canyons and valleys and stuff. For the first two areas, it's kind of like that. I haven't gotten to the third area yet, so I don't know what that looks like. But it's a beautiful game. Day and night are really nice to look at, especially when it starts changing from day into sunset and then into night. That's really cool. Yeah, it doesn't change a lot from the first game, and I don't think that's inherently a bad idea. I just think they could have made things a little more streamlined, like when it comes to the inventory management or the traversal. There's a lot of walking between the big zone areas between your camps to try and heal, and then the larger hub areas to like buy stuff. There's not a whole lot of ways to get around, and it makes traversal feel sloggy, like slow. For example, the second area, the biggest town that you get, is deep into the continent of the second area or the open area, and to get there, you have to traverse or hopefully take a cart. There's no way to fast travel to it. You have to spend the fast travel consumable, the port crystals. I've only found one in the game so far, and I used it for the city, so I have a way to get quickly to the city again if I have a wake stone to fast travel with. That's a mechanic I kind of wish they influenced a little better. And I know that there's a lot of discourse coming from the microtransactions part of the game. They should have made fast travel a little more plentiful with the consumable items, But in the first game, you get one that lasts forever, like it's infinite uses. So I think maybe at the end of this game they have something very similar. But for right now, trying to just go from point A to point B is really difficult and time consuming. And that's not inherently a bad thing, but it's just a part of the game that I think could have been done a little better. But overall, I'm still having a great time with it. When I started, I did a mage class, a mage vocation, and that was pretty cool. And you get some pretty cool like character buffs for that, for the augments. If you level up your character enough, you could choose augments, and those are the things like transfer from class to class, like increased stamina or other kind of buffs. And then I wanted the trickster. Once I got that, I had to look up online how to get trickster specifically. But once I did, it's the best class in the game, in my opinion. Not because it's specifically combat focused. It's not. It's all about distracting and like hoarding enemies onto you, taking aggro, things like that, and distracting the enemy so that your pawns, your allies, can take them out for you. You do a little bit of damage, but you can also buff your companions as well, which is pretty nice. And I like Trickster. Trickster is the class that I use for a lot of the bigger, more important fights, like the dragons and things like that. And then I'm on the Mystic Spearhead now, which is pretty cool. It's nice playing a class that's a little more melee focused. You get to climb on the monsters and do big damage, but the Mystic Spearhead lacks range and all this other kind of stuff, which isn't awful, but it's still fun. It's still really fun. My pawn is right now an archer and going into a warrior next at some point, and I like that system. It's pretty cool, the pawn system. Would I have preferred a true system of like co-op with like 2 to 4 friends or something? Like sure, that would have been nice, but it's nice to at least get a um community of pawns from like other people. I think that's a pretty cool mechanic, taking other people's pawns that are online and using them for your game. That's a neat idea. And it's just this game for me is certainly not game of the year. I don't think it deserves it compared to some of the games that came out earlier this year. Cough, cough, Final Fantasy. But I think that for an RPG, this is a really good RPG. If you want a game that's not too um, expressive in the open world, like you don't have to explore every nook and cranny. This is a game where it's like you're leveling up your character. You're gonna go here, beat a boss or beat a big enemy, and you'll probably never come back here again unless you're gonna grind or farm some kind of item or something. But for the most part, you're just playing these quests in these areas once at a time, and you'll never go back. And then we're seeing now games are now opting to not add in DLC for their titles. I think Final Fantasy VII has said that they're not going to do DLC for their game, as well as Baldur's Gate. They're not doing DLC, and that's a pretty positive thing, I think, in terms of the developers, being able to diversify their time and their resources onto projects that they would rather do rather than making like a 1.5 or a 2.5 version of a game that's been out for a few years. You know, these games are already so long. Dragon's Dogma right now is pushing, I think, 30 or 50 hours for me alone in this playthrough. Final Fantasy was already 100, and then Baldur's Gate was also 100. So you don't need to add many more hours or content to these games. I think that if a game comes out for a set price and then has enough content to justify that purchase, it's pretty good. You shouldn't have to buy a game or wait for a game to come out and then just know that there's going to be more added on that you got to pay for. That's kind of scummy for a capitalistic side. I don't know, but I don't mind DLC. I just think we need to be cautious on what kind of DLC you're buying for the content that it's for. Because some games, if it's story DLC, it's pretty good. But things like cosmetics or game changing items, that gets a lot of it gets really murky. You don't really want to maybe put your money or your time into that. But we're not seeing many games do that anymore with the DLC. And Dragon's Dogma 2 will probably have DLC. Capcom had a survey that they talked about, what people thought about Dragon's Dogma 2 if they played the first one, what they would like for it, like for DLC and things like that. And that's nice. Capcom seems to be a company that at least listens to their fans for the most part in terms of those official surveys. They're not just taking accounts from Twitter or X or whatever. And yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2 is out, and I'm still playing it. I'll probably talk about it a little more next week or whenever the next episode comes out when I finish Dragon's Dogma. And then after that, I'm unsure what's going to happen. I would like to play Chrono Trigger. That's the game I kind of have slated coming up next, just because it's heavily influenced by Toriyama and some other goats out there, which is amazing. And there's a Dragon's Dogma TV show, which is on Netflix. I would love to give that a watch at some point, maybe today when I finish up working. And that's about it for games. There's not really much else. Sandland is coming out, so I'm something I'm keep on my radar for next month. That I think is going to be pretty fun. And yeah, it's pretty slow time for games. We're waiting on the big announcements. We're waiting on the Sony showcase and then the Xbox showcase that they do like around June and all the E3 timeframe stuff, all that good stuff. We're all waiting on that. So in the meantime, I know last few episodes we've been talking a lot about the three body problem and how it had two adaptations and the adaptations are really good. You should still go read the book series, in my opinion. But I wanted to go read another Shishin Liu book because I thought Three Body Problem as a book and as a series was just so good, and I wanted to see what else he had to offer in terms of the science fiction catalog. Now, after watching the Netflix series, I chose to read Ball Lightning by Cixin Liu. And I was intrigued by this book because ball lightning is a real natural occurrence that eludes scientists even today. And Cixin Liu has a great ability of taking scientific concepts, even if they're, a little undocumented for right now. And he has a great idea of turning them into entertaining science fiction set pieces and or narrative devices. This book is clearly about obsession. Most of the characters in the book become infatuated with ball lightning to an extreme degree. The main character, Dr. Chen, whose parents were killed by ball lightning, is a docile man against ball lightning as a weapon, but needs to research it as much as he can to understand it. So in comes Lin Yun, a woman who is devoted to weapon research. And I personally think that she should have been the main character, or at least the character whose perspective was the focus of the novel, because she is far more interesting and compelling in this story than Dr. Chen. She even has most of the climax focused mainly on her. She's pretty much the main character involved in that scenario, and she gets the most interesting part of the book devoted to her. That's just one of my only gripes about it. Other than that, this book shows that scientific advancement is a double-edged sword. The ideas are fictional, but the themes can be applied to today in areas like biology, technology, AI, and almost any genre in the scientific community. I loved it. It was certainly a fun read. I wouldn't jump into it again anytime soon. I think it's certainly a one and done kind of book. Apparently, there's a TV show adaptation on there somewhere that's online, I think, probably made in China, and that seems interesting. I certainly enjoyed it, and I would like to read another Cixin Liu book, but I think for now, Three Body Problem is currently my favorite out of his works. However, coming up, certainly next week or whenever the next episode comes out, I will be probably done reading Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. And I wanted to read this book because it had a huge impact on how the world sees government oversight on harmful chemicals used by humans and the impact it has on the planet. The book was also mentioned as a big plot point for the Three Body Problem, where this book was essentially banned in other countries. And I found that fascinating to me that, a book that seems entirely on the ideas of harmful like pesticides and other chemicals being used, and how the government tries to, for the most part, cover it up. That's that's hugely important to today's like climate. I think people need to understand that, you know, our presence influences the world so much on a scale that we don't even understand. Light pollution ruins habitats for every creature, insects, bugs, animals, sea life. Sea pollution ruins, or water light pollution ruins that kind of habitat for everybody. Let alone like the destruction of forest or the natural landscape. And I'm excited to see what kind of ideas that this book has. Spring is coming around, so I like to get a little more in touch with the earth and just know how it works. It's a different book than I've read here on the podcast. I do like to try and keep them a little more focused on science fiction or video game books. Those are my kind of bread and butter. Horror books every now and again, but I think it's good to get an actual educated book and read it for a little bit. So that's what I'm gonna be doing for the next few days is reading that. That's not much else that I'll be doing. You know, this podcast has been a pretty good run. I'm liking it so far. I'm trying to keep it concise to 2 or 1 week releases with these episodes. So there's about that. And there isn't much else to talk about. We have the Marvel Overwatch game was announced, and that seems decent. I think the Overwatch battle team shooter games are you know on the wayside now, especially after Overwatch 2 kind of flopping. But Marvel is a high brand. It's a hot brand. People enjoy that franchise. I'm a little burnt out. I don't think a Overwatch game is, for me. We had that Black Panther Captain America game that was, announced before, but we just got a CGI trailer for it, which is just a trailer. Until we see the gameplay, it could just be complete garbage, and it might be. I don't necessarily have faith in that game, but I'm looking out for it. And unfortunately, we're getting more layoffs in the video game industry. GameStop, the company that sells like physical games, like in like physical retail stores, GameStop has laid off a few thousand employees, like 10,000 part-time and full-time other employees. There's articles on online that you can saw. I saw it today and this morning, and that sucks. That sucks because it is true that like I think the physical market is declining, and not in the way that like people might think about it, but these games are bought digitally, and you don't need to go out anywhere and get them, and they update on their own if you have them installed. When you see these GameStop stores lined with games, even Walmart or whatever would have the same thing, but it's just a little little discerning seeing the video game industry take this decline. You saw it with arcades. Arcades did it before. Now it's physical retail stores. It's scary because it's a very different time. We live in the digital age now. Everything could be put online, and there's a big discourse for people talking about whether or not you own a product or not, and that's really scary. Personally, for me, I'm not a loyalist to anybody. I don't think that you should devote your time or your money or your like yourself specifically to a brand or a company, but the company needs to acknowledge that they have a service that should be provided, and if you bought a game that's 20, 30 years old on their platform, you should be able to play it, even if they're not going to release another version of it, even if they're not going to update it or even put it on their store for buy. If you bought it, you should be able to play it. We saw that with the Xbox 360 and PS3 stores. I think they're shut down already. We had that with the Wii U and the 3DS stores, which was a big hit. I think it was something of like 28,000 games on the 3DS alone, or the DS compile games. It's just a big market that's just washed away, and you don't see Nintendo or anybody else doing anything about it. And yeah, that's it. The video game industry is it seems like it's in a decline on every asset. Um, that's not like the big AAA games, and even then, those are hit and miss. I don't know. I'm just here to play the games that I enjoy playing, the ones that look good to me, the ones that I think that are worth the money. And the ones that are worth the money is, I think, Dragon's Dogma 2. If you want a good action-oriented RPG, one that has a lot of classes that you can just play as from the get-go, yeah, you gotta unlock them a little later on, but you still have a good variety, especially with the party makeup that you have. You can change your pawn's vocation and then select two other companions to just pal around with. You can get some pretty cool fights with your team combination and really smite some enemies out there in the world. It's fun. I'm glad I played the first game. I really am. As janky as it was, I would have liked the second game to not feel just as janky, but it still keeps that spirit of the first game, which I think is nice as a kind of spiritual reboot that Dragon's Dogma 2 is. I think it's a success. I think it's a success that's going to be really good for Capcom, especially in terms of the open world aspects of their worlds. Maybe we'll see what carries over from Dragon's Dogma's 2 development and their ideas like monster climbing and all that other stuff. Maybe that'll transfer into the games like Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter World 2, I think, is going to be right around the corner. I wasn't a big fan of Monster Hunter World 1, but I know how massive that game is for Capcom and its fan base. I mean, that game next to like the Resident Evil reboot practically saved that company. Truly, it was the biggest Capcom Monster Hunter game ever. But yeah, that's just me. I play games, I read books, and you guys are gonna see what else I do next episode. See you guys next time.